I have to admit that sometimes I complain. And I complain about stupid stuff. If something doesn't go exactly as planned, I get all wound up and worried. And yet at the same time, I would tell you that I've been blessed. I live a charmed life. And we're going to start a series, a two-part series, called Blessed. And obviously, since it's Thanksgiving season, we're studying it because of Thanksgiving, but at the same time, I have noticed that when I count my blessings, I'm a little less likely to get wound up about when things don't go well. Why is that? Well, it's about perspective, isn't it? It's about looking at the bright side of life and looking at the good things that happen more than the things that upset us. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and we're going to go to Luke chapter 7. We're going to start at verse 36, and we're going to just kind of talk about perspective, and we're going to talk about blessing. And this story is a story where we get to see several characters interact with the concept of blessing. This has been an interesting year, hasn't it? You know, early in 2020, we had the announcement of COVID, and we shut down and we huddled in our homes. And when we did that, we got sick of being in our homes, and so whenever we went out, we looked like bandits with masks on, and there was economic ramifications of all that. For some people, they lost their jobs or their jobs greatly diminished. For other people, their jobs ramped up and they went crazy, and so there was this economic chaos that happened. And then a little later on, there was the riots around injustice, and the derecho blew through, knocking down buildings and crops. And then out on the East Coast, there was the hurricanes, and on the West Coast, there was the forest fires. And then on top of all of that, it was an election year, and we were subjected to opinions with every advertisement and commentary, and it's been a lot. And I'm sure there's other things that you can add to the whole list of complaints. And so it isn't hard to find things to complain about, is it? And it takes a little bit of focus to think of our blessings and to have a positive attitude. But it's not only thinking about our blessings, it's also thinking about where those blessings come from. And what I want to do is, as I read this story, just be thinking about the perspective of each person in the story, and try to see how they're viewing the whole situation differently. Okay, so we're going to read the whole thing in one read through, and then we'll go back and pick it apart. Starting at verse 36, it says, "When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissing them and pouring perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, 'If this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is, and that she's a sinner.' Jesus answered him, 'Simon, I have something I have to tell you.' 'Tell me, teacher,' he said. So the two people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more?' Simon replied, 'I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven.' 'You've judged correctly,' Jesus said. And then he turned to the woman and he said to Simon, 'You see this woman? I came into your house, you did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little, loves little." Then Jesus said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." The other guests began to say among themselves, "Who is this man that even forgives sins?" And Jesus said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." So did you get a kind of a perspective of the Pharisees, of Simon's perspective? Or how about Jesus' perspective? And then look at how the sinful woman perceives this whole situation. Let's just kind of stop and really pick this apart and talk about their perspectives. But before we talk about perspectives, I want to give you a picture of the culture and traditions that are going on here so that you have a little more detailed picture. This little dinner party is not just Jesus and Simon the Pharisee. This is a big event. Okay, so this is kind of how it plays out. Simon probably went out and he found Jesus somewhere teaching, and he invited him over, and together they begin to walk to this man's home. And as they do, this whole crowd that Jesus has been teaching, and maybe some people along the way, they begin to trail along with them and follow them to the house where they are going to eat. And the Pharisee escorts Jesus into the courtyard of his house. So his house will have an area that is open to the sky, but is surrounded by the house. And they're going to sit down at a table. Now, just keep in mind that the table is probably like 12 to 14 inches off the ground. And they're going to lay down on their left side. So they're going to lean on their left elbow, and they're going to eat with their right, laying down next to the table. And all the way around them in this courtyard is this group of people who have joined them, and it's a public event where you have two theologians maybe debating about certain perspectives, and you have all these people who are standing there listening in and kind of crowding around them to hear what's going on. And then in verse 37, Luke tells us that one of the people in this crowd is a woman who is not like the others. This woman does not fit in with them. Here's this woman at this highly religious, upstanding man's home, and she's a sinner. And the word that Luke uses there in the Greek, it means sinner, but everybody knows what kind of sinner she is. She's one of those women who sells herself to make money. And so this is a derogatory term for her, and all the other people in town know what she does, and they avoid her like she has COVID. I mean, they're giving her social distance. And she's positioned herself at the feet of Jesus, kind of behind him, and the word that Luke uses for weeping indicates that she isn't just there aren't just silent tears falling from her eyes. She is sobbing. And as she's standing there sobbing, Jesus is kind of almost underneath her, and her tears fall on Jesus' feet. And she realizes it. And she doesn't have a towel. So what she does is she takes off the covering over her hair, and she pulls out her hair, and she uses her hair to wipe his feet. Now, understand that this is lewd. This is totally inappropriate. And the rest of the visitors, the rest of the onlookers are horrified. They are in shock. And the weird thing is that Jesus doesn't react negatively at all. He doesn't pull away. He doesn't tell her to stop. He just lets her do that. And she gets to the point where she's kissing his feet. Well, I'm pretty sure that the conversation between Jesus and the Pharisee has been overshadowed. And then at a certain point, she breaks open this this vessel of perfume and she pours it out on Jesus' feet. And this is a strong smelling perfume that just fills the air and everybody can smell it. And you have to understand that she just dumped on Jesus' feet $35,000 to $40,000 worth of perfume. This is like a year's wages to buy this stuff. She's given him the most valuable thing she has, and she's put it on his feet. Well, this woman is so overcome with emotion that it seems that she's lost all inhibitions. She doesn't care what anybody else thinks. She is going to show love to this rabbi, this man who has in some way either taught her or individually connected with her to the point where she feels the love and grace of God through him. Jesus has revolutionized her life. Well, I'm sure that this Pharisee, Simon, has noticed what's going on, and his whole goal was to have Jesus over and have this theological discussion and to have all these people come and see them have a discussion. Jesus is a famous upcoming rabbi that everybody is interested in. And he knew that when he invited Jesus to come over, that there would be all these people who would come and stand in his courtyard to watch he and Jesus interact. He knew that if Jesus came over to his house, like this was going to be a major event and he was going to be the talk of the town. But now, here's this woman and she's creating this fiasco. This is not what he had in mind, and he's repulsed by it. And his thought is, if this Jesus guy, if this rabbi knew what kind of woman this was, surely he would reject her. And Jesus does know what she's thinking, and he does know what he's thinking. And Jesus says to him, Simon, I have something I want to tell you. And Simon goes like, okay, go ahead, I'm listening. And then in verse 41, Jesus launches into a mini parable. He says, okay, so there's this banker, this guy who had money, and he lent out his money to people, and these people couldn't pay. There was one where he lent like $500 to, and he couldn't pay, and he lent money, $50 to another guy, and he couldn't pay, and he just let go of the debt. He just said, you know what, just let it go, don't worry about it. And Jesus' question was, okay, so who's going to be more thankful in that situation? Now, based on the wording that Luke puts in, Simon says, well, the one who owes more money, but he doesn't say it in a way where he says it enthusiastically. He's hesitant to say it because he knows where Jesus is going with this. I mean, he can read into this. And before we go on with the story, let me just back up. I want to explain proper Jewish etiquette so that we can understand this next section. When someone comes over to your house during that time, there's a few things that you would do. You would wash their feet. You would grab the person by the shoulders and you would kiss them on each cheek. And then you would put a pinch of sweet-smelling oil on their head, or even just a perfume that goes on their head. And that's just done out of common respect, especially for a man who has a significant amount of money. If he's going to show this person honor, these are the things he's going to do. And then starting in verse 44, Luke tells us that Jesus looks at the woman and talks to Simon. And he does this contrast between Simon and the woman. He says, Simon, you didn't give me any water to wash my feet. And she's washed my feet with her tears. You didn't kiss me on the cheek, but she's kissing my feet. You didn't put oil on my head, and she's perfuming my feet. And here's the problem that Simon has. The problem that Simon has is that he's blessed. He has a great life. He's avoided sin and done a good job of it. He obviously has money. I mean, he has Jesus out to eat. He has this big courtyard. He has this nice house. And isn't it sad that his blessings are keeping him from having a real intimate relationship with God? But this woman has struggled. She's been broken probably all of her life. She maybe even came from a really dysfunctional home and a tough situation. She's completely failed at living the good life. And because she struggles, because she's failed, she's actually receiving the ultimate blessing. Where Jesus looks at her and he goes like, because of your great love, because you have used your brokenness to completely turn your life over to me, you can go with this sense of freedom, knowing that grace has reached into your life and transformed you. You know, I think about my own life, and I think to myself, how do I approach God and how do I approach Jesus? I've been blessed. Do I use it as a form of arrogance with other people? Do I hold their pasts against them and look down at them because they didn't live like me? Do I put these barriers between me and them? And do I end up degrading them? And how do I approach Jesus? Do I approach Jesus with his sense of humility of, Jesus, if you don't save me, if you don't reach into my life, if you don't transform me, I will never measure up, no matter how hard I try. Because what had happened with this Pharisee is that he had become confident in himself because he had been blessed. And boy, that type of confidence, that kind of arrogance, that sneaks up on us and hits us before we even realize it, doesn't it? And so here's what I'm encouraging us to all consider. Let's not miss the blessing. Let's not miss the real blessing. Sometimes the gifts of God are our greatest curse. Because we become so enthralled with the gifts of God that we forget about God. We live the good life. We have all these things. And instead of turning to God and saying thank you to him, we begin to become confident in ourselves and what we produce and what we do. And so we miss out on the real blessing of this sense of humility and struggle to be connected to the God who provides all of that for us. And so as we go into the Thanksgiving season, let's be aware that the very blessings that God gives us can either lead us into his presence or distract us from him. And let's just keep an eye on our attitude of gratitude and the source of where we think that comes from. Let us not become confident in ourselves, in our own ability to make money, in our own ability to be good. But let's approach it with humility and realize that it's by grace we are saved, through faith. It's not of ourselves. This is a gift of God. I'm going to give you just a minute to bow your head and to pray. Connect with God now. Talk to him about your blessings. and then we'll close this service with prayer. Jesus, you once said that it is difficult for a rich man to get to heaven. And this whole country, we are rich. We have so much. There are so many things that distract us from you. And the blessings that you've given us, instead of leading us into your presence, sometimes become distracting, and we end up not coming to you because we get arrogant about who we are and what we've done. Give us humble hearts. Give us this ability to really see the blessings that you give us and have this true sense of thanks for you and the way that you have blessed us. May you be honored in all that we do, and may we lift you up in every way. In Jesus' name, amen.